Most people talk about scale. Very few people have actually built it at billion-dollar levels across food, fintech, and healthcare. Today's guest didn't just operate inside Unicorn. He helped architect them, and now is doing something even harder, backing the next generation of founders before the world has seen them. So, welcome back to the Breakout, the podcast where we go deep with builders, operators, and investors who have already been in the trenches. Today's guest is Ankur Sethi, founders and managing partner at Winner Capital. Ankur brings over 17 years of operator experience in scaled businesses as companies like Swiggy, Paytm, and Aster DM Healthcare, including businesses from single-digit millions to hundreds of millions in ARR. He's now building Winner Capital around a powerful thesis, humanity, and technology, backing early-stage founders across consumer tech, health tech, AI, and frontier tech. What makes this conversation special is Ankur isn't a spreadsheet-first investor, he's an operator-first partner. So today, we are unpacking what he has learned, what most founders get wrong, and how he thinks about building real winners. Ankur, welcome to Breakout Podcast.
Thank you, Darshil. Glad to be here, and thanks for that introduction. Really kind of you.
So you didn't start as an investor, you started as a builder, right?
Correct.
Take us back to the early entrepreneur attempt you did before joining Swiggy and Paytm, and what did those early failures teach you that success never could?
Very interesting, by the way. That's something long time ago. So this is year 2007. I completed my engineering and I got campus placed with this company called Daikin Air Conditioners. They were pretty new to Indian landscape, but otherwise very popular global air conditioning brand. They're a Japanese brand, number one or number two in the world. But I was a young guy. When I got that opportunity, it was like, I think my pay package was K a year, like 2.4 lakhs. That's how you define it in India, right? 240K. Is how we see it today. So I was like, okay, and I used to run on a 5K monthly budget that my parents used to send me. So I was like, all of a sudden, your 4x of your monthly budget felt like you won in the world, and this is all that you needed, right? It was like, okay, I've got a job. I was running home at 5K. Now I'm going to get 20K. This is life. It's all that I wanted ever. Anyway, 6 months into it, I realized that this is not the space that I want to be in, and I just kind of decided to move out of that role overnight. I was like, like any other young boy, I was like, I can't do this. I have to figure out something else for myself. Retail, traditional industry is not made for me. And that is how I decided to kind of quit it. And 2008 primarily is when I started so I quit this company. I worked there for about 6 months. And then 2008 early, I decided I have to do something of my own. And, there was nothing to lose, basically. I came back home. I was in Pune in India, and I came back home to Delhi, and I told my parents I'm going to figure out something of my own. And I happened to meet some people in the .com space, people who'd come from US, launching their .coms in India, telling me about Silicon Valley, telling me about what VC as a concept is. 2008, we didn't have like even VCs in India. There was nothing called VC. We didn't know anything about VC. We knew we could do an MBA, but MBA was basically for getting a good job, like maybe getting a job at McKinsey or Deloitte or something like that, right? Even getting a job at Accenture was like, okay, you want to be, on site in a few months and years, and that's all. That is what most of us dreamed back in the day. And then 2008-9, I started my first business. We were an offline, extracurricular activity center. I ran that with now my wife. Ran that for 3 years. We expanded by franchising across 6 states. We had 36 odd outlets, decent business and all of that. And then I realized that it's not scaling beyond a point. So maybe I need to pivot and do something else. So we converted that into a discovery platform where you could not just book our services, but you could book other services around in the market as well. That didn't shape up. Then we took up I took up another business, which was more to do with e-commerce and aggregator kind of business for apparel. And then eventually, I'd been in the business for almost 4 to 5 years of just finding that PMF, finding that investor, finding that scale that I was really hungry about. But I could not. And the biggest learning for me at that point in time was that, timing is important, team is important, and doing your PMF is very important. Like finding your MVP in a PMF, BMF is business market fit. So your economics have to work, your products have to work. And that is how you end up scaling significantly. And that is what, after I would say 4 to 5 failures of life, Swiggy taught me, right? Which is when we were scaling up, we had very clear understanding of consumer insight. We knew what consumer is asking for, and we want to deliver exactly that, which is no minimum order, deliver within 30 minutes, and have plethora of options to choose from. So I think that just opened doors for us in terms of our PMF and our ability to scale the business the way we did. And yeah, those were some exciting learnings and some amazing failures of life as well before Swiggy happened.
Because back in 2008, as you said, there were I think only a single digit investors in India or a VC firm back
Not
in.
even single digits. So there was Elevate, which was called SAP. There was Sequoia, there was Tiger, and that's it. I think there were 3 or 4 large, and they were also just opening their shops in the country. Maybe made 1 or 2 investments, not even very popular. All the partners were either ex-US Silicon Valley operators or investors in the US team or something like that. And nobody knew, even they didn't know what this market is going to be like. Neither, I was a very young guy, right? Like just out of college, 22, 23, trying to go to VCs. That is when I think it at first hit me that there could be a profession like VC. Least had I known that I'd be wearing those shoes myself, but it did excite me even back in the day when I kind of went to their office and met some of those folks.
But it has been said that a newbie or beginner, they crack down the industry rather than the experienced one, right? Because newbie or beginner, they don't know what problems they will be facing, and just with the passion and the energy, they try to crack it and they figure it out on the way, right? And as you said, after 4 to 5 failures, you learn at Swiggy how to scale business. So at Swiggy, you scale a regional business from 5 million to 350 million in ARR in just 2 years. What was that one non-obvious lesson from that phase that most founders underestimate when scaling fast?
Yeah, I think very good question. I think one unprecedented challenge is communication between the teams when you're scaling super fast. So look at the teams that had to coordinate for this to happen. So there is sales team, which is onboarding the supply. There's operations team, which is basically running this engine of delivery boys. There is marketing team, which is running this engine of demand generation. And then there is HR team, which is trying to plug all the manpower required to manage this scale. And all of these teams have to communicate very intensely together, because look at the scale. The scale is happening where you're growing 22% every week. So if there are 2,000 delivery boys on ground, you practically need 400 new delivery boys every week to fulfill your demand. And at that scale, operations team has to speak to demand team, has to speak to sales team, has to talk to HR team to make sure that the fulfillment happens at right place, right time, right promotions are done. So I think this is what a lot of founders underestimate, that things can run on their own. I think one of the key factors that I was able to drive in the team was the strong communication between the leaders of these departments. So an operations head or operations head -1, sales -1, sales head, and so on and so forth. If a sales head and an ops head reported into me, their teams were the ones who were interacting on a day-to-day basis, right? And I had to make sure that their communications are seamless. They sit down together every single day to talk about their challenges, solve that on a real-time basis, and we're ready for scale always. I think that's what made us grow super fast. Our communication channels were extremely transparent. Our ability to get people together. I would take people out on a Friday. We would sit down after our day every single day to chat about what's happening. Literally just hang around together to see where we stand in our progress. Are we going to be ready for this weekend or not? Because our spikes were, let's say, every Saturday and Sunday. And Saturday, Sunday is when sales team is not in the office, ops team is in office, HR team is not in office, right? So how do you make sure that these guys are interacting Monday to Friday to stay prepared for the biggest peak that we're going to see so far on this weekend? And I think teams did well. They did speak to each other. They kind of formed that camaraderie, and that bond happened. And then, everybody was just helping each other to bring that growth, which was significant, that we saw every week.
It need to be a full 360 cycle where sales, marketing, operations, and HR need to coordinate all along. That's how they can make a growth on the scale what you have done. Otherwise, there will be an inefficiencies in the system, and it will collapse over the time, or it will burn more money than usually. Will eventually, many food delivery companies started before Swiggy and Zomato, but they still have to shut it down.
Yeah, it's unprecedented growth, right? So imagine you need to start thinking at scale. We are talking about almost 1,000 orders per day kind of getting up, right? Last weekend, if it was 5,000 orders, it was 6,000 orders this weekend. And then the weekend after, and then once we reached 100 kind of orders per day, this number, when 10% growth meant 10,000 orders, which was 8 months ago, this was our everyday order. Spike in itself is just 10,000 orders, right? So that was the growth that we were seeing. The engine was running too fast. And of course, the technology, the platform, and our backends are very strong as well to support all of this growth. But at the same point in time, I think teams on ground executed it absolutely flawlessly. I think the communication between the teams was outstanding, and passion for everyone to grow things together, I think, just showed us how to get this done.
I think it is not just the growth. I can call it a hyper growth. The way it was scaling every week, every day, and
Absolutely.
you have operated inside a hyper growth startups as well, like post IPO giants and large healthcare enterprises, right? So how did your leadership style evolve across those different environments, different sectors?
Very interesting. I've actually never thought about it, but yeah, now that I think about it, I think different stages of companies require different kind of skill set to be managed. So, for example, my last role as the chief operating officer for this large healthcare group required a very different skill set compared to what I did with, let's say, Paytm and Swiggy. Because at Aster, I was required to present to a very different group of people, part of promoters' office. We have to convince on why do we need capital or funds for this kind of business, how do we shape it up, and how will we responsibly scale the business. Like, this is a very traditional white collar business. Like, look at this as a 35-year-old billion-dollar organization, thinking very structurally, thinking very offline first, thinking very invest first, or whatever, like invest later, return first kind of thinking, and so on and so forth, right? So that required a very different convincing in terms of my presentation of the project, or the proposal of the project, or the budget, or how do we need to structure our P&L, and so on and so forth. While something at Paytm and Swiggy was still hyper scale, think of scale first, think of growth first, and then we were obviously a lot more digitally equipped when it came to Paytm and Swiggy. Aster was where I was building my own tools at all point in times, even being in a large organization required you to get approval for something as little as Microsoft Office. While being at Paytm and Swiggy, it meant I could do so many things on my own. I had like millions of budgets in my own hand at times to approve things and stuff like that. While on the other side, a large organization requires a very different, whether we agree to it or not, but there is always bureaucracy in large structures. There is no doubt about it, and you have to figure out your ways to navigate around it. And that was there even at Paytm and Swiggy. I mean, that's just natural way of how large organizations operate, right? You could minimize the friction to get things done, but at the same point in time, it does exist, and those are also guardrails and controls to ensure that the business is well controlled, right? So I think, to make the long story short, I think the different leadership style included where I had to drive teams in companies like Paytm and Swiggy. The top level goal was very clear, while in a structure like Aster, you had to drive more management, like convincing management was more important, because this was absolutely new for them as well. Thinking digitally, digital products, digital tools, and all of that was also something that they were not completely aware of. So even management had to be convinced and told how do we convert the organization into digital first thinking. I think that was a difference in how my leadership style basically changed. And just to give you a little context, Paytm and Swiggy, I could walk in a jeans and a t-shirt, but at Aster, I had to wear a suit. So that's also part of how you present in an organizations which are very different.
That change from the industry, from the region, or the way how the large organization has been operated. And as you said, I think that is one of the most important skill that founders need to learn, that is to convince, right? Not just if you're starting a startup, or in life, you need to convince everyone, like either your parent and to sell, or you have to sell yourself. You're there to sell yourself. Anyway, absolutely. As a founder, you need to convince your employees, you need to convince your investor, you need to convince your team, you need to convince your customers. So it's a part of journey, and you have to learn that convincing, the storytelling that makes a startup successful, right?
Absolutely.
And you says that startup founders thrive in chaos, right? And scale-up founders thrives in clarity. Can you break down what the translation actually look like in a real life scenario?
Okay, so look at this as when you're doing a 0 to 1. Okay, so for example, even when I was doing now Winner Capital again, as a startup in my life, we're a startup fund, right? Let's say we were also figuring out what thesis, what are the sectors which are doing well, what are the sectors you want to back for next 1 to 2 decades, right? So we went through multiple thought experiments, right? We went through saying, if we were to build something in healthcare, what do we see getting unlocked, right? So we went around seeing the healthcare companies, we went around seeing the technology, we went around seeing the different departments within healthcare. There is one part is just the business management, which is hospital, clinic management and all of that. Then there is also personal healthcare management, right? Which is more B2C. At this point in time, imagine a startup scenario is where you're trying to figure out what's the real solution. You're throwing things at the wall right now to say, okay, it feels like my instinct is people want this solution. So you throw that on people and you try and make sense if it's sticking or people like coming back or not. And then you find out this is not working. So you immediately iterate and whatever you've learned, you try and zero upon saying, okay, maybe this is the direction that we need to take. And then you go into that direction and you realize, okay, maybe that is not working either. So maybe this is not right. Let's go to the third direction, right? So it's a bit of chaotic, right? While you're sticking to the problem, you're still trying to find what's the right solution. So it's still very, very chaotic. And it's like, okay, this is working. This is not working. Maybe some part of this is not monetizable. So maybe I need to think of something else. So you're still in that stage. So 0 to 1, I always call it like, consider a 0 to 2-year-old baby, right? He doesn't know how to walk properly. He doesn't know what is what in terms of it can go and touch anything. It can go and eat anything. It can go and throw anything, right? That's primarily what 0 to 1 looks like. It's chaos. You are not able to make sense of anything at all, right? You're just trying whatever is coming your way. You're assuming, is this supposed to be eaten or it's supposed to be thrown, right? How do I take this value? And that's the instinct that you're building in that chaos at that point in time to say, okay, now it's starting to make sense when I'm seeing something repeatedly, some process running repeatedly, right? While when you get to a point where you found a PMF where okay, this is where the retentions are high, this is where monetization is high, this is where repeatability is high, this is where scale is high. Now, this is what I want to do is when you kind of have a playbook ready, you're like, okay, this is how we'll acquire customers. This is our customer acquisition cost. This is how they come into the system. This is their onboarding. This is their repeat rates. This is their retentions. And now I just have to start fulfilling this funnel every day, day in, day out, right? So you start at scale, you just copy paste this playbook every single day. You have to ensure that you're very rigorously, very thoroughly, and very diligently following that playbook. So for example, back in Swiggy, or I'll give you Swiggy and Paytm examples both. Back in Swiggy, we knew that if we built in supply, the demand conversion would automatically, the flywheel would start churning very quickly, right? So we used to work in a pocket basis in a region of, let's say, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers, 5 kilometers kind of a region is how we used to launch it. So if we were to launch a 5-kilometer zone, we would say we need to launch at least top 15 to 20 restaurants in this place. Otherwise, it will not pick up at all, right? And then you need to have certain number of delivery boys to make sure that that area operationally performs well, within those stipulated times and so on and so forth, promised delivery times. So once you had that, you knew that every location, you just had to go and do this. Open 15, start like open 15, have 10 delivery boys, do your flyering, and that's the playbook. So we went to 200 areas, just did that, right? For the year, we just kept unlocking the same thing. That is how the scale up was happening, right? And at same point in time, the zones which were launched were also filled with supply continuously. The same team is working every day, making sure those top restaurants, your gaps in those supplies in terms of, if I've got North Indian, do I get Chinese, do I get Korean, whatever that area is, you kept building that supply and that demand generation kept happening, and then the delivery boy fulfillment kept happening, and it was the same playbook everywhere, right? Similarly with Paytm, when we were doing the channel that I was building, where that channel went from 0 to almost 100 million in ARR, was this device, POS device sales, right? We had for I think for the first 500 devices, or maybe the first 200 devices, we were trying to sort for what's the right KYC, where can the fraud happen, so risk and fraud protection, we were thinking through and all of that. We took good 2-3 months just to sort that thing out. Once we sorted that thing, everything else again was just market call, sell, KYC, same process running across, and then within a year, we are almost like 7,000-8,000 devices on ground, right? So that's how basically the scale playbook happens. While when you're just starting up or doing your 0 to 1, there are too many processes that you need to sort or be sure of, processes, PMF, your business economics, and so on and so forth, before you go about scaling that up.
Clarity is much more important, because when I started my fintech startup, the Flash Pay, right, it was so much of chaos. But after like doing so much, trying so much things, building up, I think founders should give some more time to have a clarity and then start building it, to just otherwise need to iterate or try too many things, right, to find the product market fit. So if they have the clarity what they are doing, it will be helpful for them to copy and paste that same playbook and apply it to the different teams, and that's how they can scale it quicker.
I think See, you also have to, in a 0 to 1 situation, you have to be like very, very self-aware. Okay. A lot of times what happens is because we are founders and we have our biases and we are like, okay, if I am building, I've had this problem, which means the world has this problem, right? And if world has this problem, if I like this solution, that is how the world will also like this solution. It doesn't work like that. It never works like that actually, right? So we have to be very objective. We have to be very honest in our thinking. We have to be very high self-aware to know that this is my bias or this is what people are feeling about my solution. Be a little bit, so the data is very small, but try and pick up signals from data. Be more data oriented as well, in terms of understanding consumer behavior or general feedback for your product. And I think just experiment very objectively. Don't be emotional about either the problem or the solution. Be obsessed with the problem, whatever you're solving. In the end, you're solving a problem. A founder is solving a problem. An entrepreneur is solving a problem. An entrepreneur is not like I am launching another convenience store, right? You're not an entrepreneur. You're a businessman and you can do a great business out of running regular businesses. There is no question about it. I don't want to disrespect anybody for that matter. But if you're an entrepreneur, your main job is to solve a problem that exists in the world and a large one. Try and solve a large problem, right? And then once you're obsessed with the problem, you've understood where the problem sits. It's usually something very simple and small where the unlock needs to happen. So figure that small little thing that you need to simplify in the whole complexity of that problem. And I think you'll be able to find your way out.
They need to have a clarity alongside with the over emotionality, right? What's the biggest mistake you have seen as a founder make when they move from 1 million to 10 million and from 10 million to 100 million?
A lot of mistakes. Like 1 million to 10 million, I've seen companies, like I think getting to 5-10 million is easy even without setting up processes. Like you can still be very people dependent and end up doing a decent 5-10 million business. Like especially if you're in the US or UK area, right? Because 1 million run rate per month is not too much. Like a small business here is doing $1 million, right? And small team can get to a 10 million revenue very quickly in general. But getting to a 10 million to 100 million will require a lot of processes and structures, right? Otherwise, you will fail miserably. I think that's one of the mistakes where people think the way they've got it to 10 million is the way that they can get to 100 million and they're not able to envision what are the challenges, structure, changes. So I think that's one of those things that I've seen very commonly across some of these companies. And then they struggle, then they figure their way out later. And even scalability is challenging sometimes. Sometimes the market itself is not scalable to, let's say, 100 million just from a problem or a solution standpoint itself. So I think those are some of the common mistakes that I do see around.
Many founders do raise fund. They take company from million to 10 million, but it's hard from them to scale from 10 million to 100 million. You talked about the leadership becoming the real product at scale. What does that mean by like how the founders can recognize when it's the time to stop hustling and start art? Because you have to go from 0 to 1, you have to hustle. But after you reach a point, you need to start architecting how the workflows or how to plan the things around to make sure you have a hyper growth like Paytm and Swiggy.
See, I think you're architecting at all point in times, whether it is 1 to 10 or 10 to 100, you're always architecting in terms of, how do you make sure that you're scale ready as an org, right? So one of the critical factors on why it comes down to, in the end, a scale up is all about leadership is somebody sitting at the top, let's say the founder and the CEO, right? His ability to basically bring in more leaders to lead the business is what defines the future, right? That is where I think your landscape starts changing. So you need to be, imagine if you've built a $10 million company, now you have everything that you needed, you've got a great tech and you understand the processes and structures, but you've not built a company or leaders to join from some established organization. Let's take Swiggy example, right? Like there are a lot of food tech companies before us and after us as well. And the reason that we did well because the org wasn't just structured for few people at the top or for the founders, but it was structured for everybody who joins a structure somewhere. So we had best of people from P&G, we had people from HUL, from large retail organizations, we had people who done global expansions, we had technology people sitting in from Amazon, right? So how do you build a world-class facility? World-class, and by facility, I don't mean your office space, right? I mean this structure, this mindset within the organization, where the strongest leaders can thrive, not just survive, but they need to like really thrive thrive and take the organization ahead, right? If that has to be done, you have to create setups beforehand, right? So I think one area that I am also very personally convinced about is getting your HR policies in place ahead of its time. Like even when you're 1 million, you need to set it up in a way where anybody joining the team knows what's the culture like, what are the policies like, what can I do here, what can I not do here, right? So those standardizations, those policies, just from human first. See, in the end, leaders are also people, right? We're all human. So how do you make sure that you help human unlock their potential in your organization? I think ends up being your superpower always. Whether it was Amazon, whether it is Swiggy, whether it is Paytm, whether it is HUL, whether it is PNG, whether it is Facebook, whatever organization it is. I think when leaders have gotten a chance to prove themselves, to outshine and outdo themselves, is when these organizations also outdo themselves. So I think it's very critical for founder to mature, to scale himself up or herself up, to also welcome those opportunities and basically unlock those windows for leaders to unleash themselves as much as the organization as well.
All companies should learn, I think, because to bring leaders from these companies, it's definitely hard, but to make them stay and thrive, it's much more harder, because if the company is not growing at the rate they want to grow, they will leave for another organization.
See, the thing with leaders is, I mean, by nature of it, every leader is ambitious. Every leader wants to grow. They aspire to be the best, and they want to make sure that they're in the right culture, they're with the right team, but they're also learning. So leaders aren't just about their own delivery. It's also about what they're learning from their environment around themselves, right? So I think that you have to look at this very collectively, and that's why after a point, when you're scaling up companies, it comes down to your mindset, your ability to architect that large scale story even before you execute it on the ground. So just you have to evolve and you have to think very, very differently from a 0 to 1 stage at any point in time.
As you scale like 3 different companies from 3 different sectors, right? And after 17 years of operating experience, why did you decide to start a fund? Like, what was the moment made you realize that, okay, it's time from moving from building or operating companies to backing founders?
I've been asked this question a couple of times, like more than a couple, in fact. But I had a few career options when I moved to this side of the world. I could have gone back to being an operator. I could have started something of my own. And then the third option was going on the other side of the table as well, right? So I just felt, and there was a lot of introspection around why I did this. And I think the answer that I got was that my personal excitement has been around learning about different industries and being at the front of these changing technologies and these changing solutions. So AI was at its cusp. It's still at its cusp for that matter, right? And I had done enough to see scale in different industries and in different geographies. So my own confidence of saying, is this a playbook? For example, when I was doing Swiggy, I thought this was Swiggy's playbook, right? When I did Paytm, I thought this was Paytm's playbook, right? But when I did Aster, I realized, no, it was always my playbook, right? Because so I needed that confidence to say that, will I be really able to add value to founders that I back or I work with? And I think doing that third time in a new geography did help me realize that I can. So once I realized that, I said, it seems like the right time. Technology is evolving and kind of entering into a new landscape.
That's very, very honest and very true. As you said that it was not the Paytms or Swiggy or Aster playbook. It was you have developed your own playbook and implement over the different sectors and industry, right? And
Correct.
Winner Capital, it's built on the thesis of humanity and technology, right? How do you personally define that, and what doesn't fit in that thesis?
So with Winner Capital, our focus is, so we're also iterating a little bit on our thesis somewhere, but broadly we are about anything that impacts humanity either today or it will in the, that's how we see the world. What we mean by that is, so let me give you a snapshot of the future, right? The future is, we may not be flying in the planes that we are flying in. It could either be manless drones, it could be wide body planes, it could be maybe even private pods. You never know, right? So that's one way of looking at how we might be commuting in the future. The other way is form factors are changing. You and I are today, I'm chatting to you on my laptop. This may not be the future. We might be chatting through our eyeglasses. Telepathy might be real. all of that is already happening. So if I want to talk to you or talk to the audience, I just need to think and then it'll automatically connect or something like that will start happening, right? So that's another way of looking at communication. Third way is learning. So today the learning is still very templatized, very standard, K-12. Of course, you need to learn basics. I'm not saying that you don't need to, but I think beyond a point, the curiosity is not fulfilled in a very personalized fashion, right? Like my son, if he's curious about gaming or technology or creating, I don't think he's taught until even he's passed out the college, which is like he's 11 years old now, which means that he'll have to wait another 11 years just to learn how to, like practically speaking, right? I think that that's not going to be reality in next 1 to 2 decades. I just feel a 11-year-old will be running businesses. They'll be able to create a lot of things that they want to create. They can start finding their passion much earlier in life. Basically, education will also transform into being more personalized and like very, very customized to your needs, and AI can drive that as well, right? So that's again on the learning side. On the convenience side, the future will be, again, drone deliveries will be happening, kitchens will be automated, you might not be even cooking food at home. That will be reality because it'll become so cheap and templatized, which is what Travis Kalanick is also trying to solve. So I think those are the realities that we might see in next 10 to 20 years, which is, again, look at this more as a frontier. So robotics, AI, space tech, all of that kind of becoming the reality of the future, which is what we define as humanity into technology of the future. But also in the present, there are solutions that you need, which is where we are more AI native or vertical AI as our thesis, right? Which is where we are saying, hey, can you integrate my healthcare into one single app, from my reports to my daily workouts to my charts and my HRVs and all of that? Like I wear this Whoop, right? So there's already information on my daily stats, my sleeping patterns, and so on and so forth. And then there is my medical report, which says, okay, cholesterol is high. So am I on track or not? What do I need to do differently? That becomes like a vertical AI integrated solution for the human today, right? So that's one way of looking at it. And then there is also fintech. Can somebody help me manage my funds better? Can somebody help me trade intraday or short term, long term, whatever my goals are? Where can I take risks? So there is an opportunity in that space for today as well. And again, there is, technology which is to do with let's say your and my work management as well, right? Our note summary, our action summary. So I think there's an AI nativeness kind of vertical AI play that's happening for human today, which is where we want to kind of stay focused when we say humanity cross technology of today. And then there is humanity cross technology of tomorrow, which is where space tech, robotics, all of that starts taking shape as well. So that's a broad kind of thinking around our thesis on humanity cross technology for Winner Capital.
Because in last 2-3 years, the AI will be more into the vertical space, setting each and everything, and it will even impact the small task you will be doing, and it will be entering for every sector, either it's personal, either work or either business. And for the study, as you mentioned, that the study will be very generic, right? Everyone goes from grade 1 to grade 12. But I think in the future, it will be more as a self-learning pace, right? If someone want to learn science and he don't have to wait for another 2 years because he's in grade 6 and he wants to learn for grade 8, it will be more as a self-learning space. Like if I want to learn it quicker, I want to gain knowledge, or if I want to explore more into that specific sector, he will or she will be able to do it very quickly because of the AI and self-personalized learning.
Yeah, I think also, see, learning or education is only like maybe 8-10 decades old, right? Like 1800 max, right? That's what we're talking about. And it was structured in a way where you could fulfill the need of the industrial era, right? If you wanted to be like a basic clerk in that time, this is what you needed to learn, whether it was commerce or science, right? I think it has evolved. And we have not seen a lot of disruption in this category also. Like education hasn't disrupted too much other than just on the tech education, right? So I think in general, this structure is going to change in the next 2 decades for sure. This seems like the moment where power of AI, where power of personal learning, where power of personal education is becoming a reality. And in fact, my son is now maybe grade 6, 7 now. But if I had a kid today, I can think of a future where I don't think he needs to go to school also. Like their homeschooling can be a reality. And homeschooling is a reality, right? And that is just done through good AI support. I don't think we need to do that. And parents are realizing it. Social angle is another solution that we need to do, which is what schools and physical school does help with, but I think just for your social engagement, you don't need to like fixate 12 years of templatized learning for an individual, right? I don't think it works anymore.
I think couple of days back I've seen a video of Physics Wala. They developed a video series, animated video series for learning of chemistry. So like it's easier. If someone don't want to study, they can watch a video and from that series they will learn easier.
See, in fact, the way AI can solve this is, I remember there was a point where I hated chemistry in grade 11, and then I went to a tutor who made me fall in love with it because he made it so simple to understand for me. Maybe there were, and this was a private coach, like a private coaching center. And this teacher was like doing for about 60 to 80 kids. And I'm not sure if everybody got it the same way, but it worked for me. So AI can actually iterate in hundreds of ways to make you understand what you want to understand, right? It can give you an animated video. It can give you some other examples. It can show you real life situation. It can give you theoretical answers also, and so on and so forth. And it can keep testing you on where you've progressed with that learning too. And then you can also start discovering this about yourself, whether this is something exciting for you or not. Like this is curiosity. Chemistry is curiosity at what? At age 8, right? Which is when you're seeing that if I put like soap on my body, why does it bubble? That's chemistry, right? And today, as a small little kid, you don't have an answer for it. But if you go to AI, now AI will explain you why that happens. And if you want to go deeper, you're like, okay, what happens? What's the chemical in the soap? How does it react with the skin? So you can start finding those answers and you can have that understanding at age 6, 7, 8, whenever you want it.
True.
Right? So, which is the power that I was talking about that AI can unlock. So, Physics Wala animated video, I would say, is just one example. There are so many ways to teach different kids in different ways, and I have a different ability to learn, different way of learning something, which is what can be very customized for me. I am a video driven guy, for example. I learn so much through videos myself. I love, because it has my visual attention, it has my hearing attention. So all of a sudden I'm learning very quickly. I don't learn so much through reading for whatever reason. So I am a guy who, if I was to build or I was to look at any AI product, it would be video heavy. So that's very personalized again. So that's the power of AI for sure.
I can learn via video faster than reading or if someone is teaching. Because when I was in grade 11, say physics, something I didn't like it because our teacher doesn't have a way to teach it. And that's how, because of the teacher, I started hating physics and I was not able to get good grades. But I learned more from my family friend, from him, because the way he was teaching is quite easier or a storytelling way, right? I learned more of physics and space from my childhood friend rather than the teachers from my higher secondary schools, right?
Yeah, teachers are human. Artificial intelligence is smarter than human intelligence and more flexible and more, it doesn't rest. It doesn't need rest, right? So obviously AI is going to be smarter than any individual teacher for sure.
Yes. And you often talk about backing founders with earned insight, right? How do you distinguish earned insight from a well-researched pitch?
From a well-researched pitch to an earned insight. See, earned insights is usually very specific. Well-researched pitch is noise. I've gone to this, I've done quant research and all of that. I don't think it works like that. Your earned insight is, for example, let me try and put it this way. I don't want to put the Swiggy example because it's, I think it's very understood right now. But let's look at a new example. But you can come and say, hey, I am targeting CFOs in organizations which are more than 50 million in revenue or whatever, large enterprises, if that's how you want to define it. And I am solving this reporting problem for the CFO because he has 10,000 tools that he goes after every single day to look at, inventory, ABC, revenue. So I know CFO goes every morning to his desk at 9 a.m. He switches on either this Microsoft report, some other tool report, and then has to go through 5 different processes just to learn about how his business performed yesterday. So my insight is CFOs need one single dashboard or one single email every morning at 8:45 before they hit their office, which has all the information that they need, and then they can start their day and start actioning on. This is sharp CFO consumer insight of a specific organization, scale organization. And then you talk about all these CFOs do the same thing. This is an insight out of like one CFO profile in the organization. And then you don't go about saying, hey, my insight is these large organizations don't have good reporting structure. I'm not talking about that, right? I am talking about one single ICP insight where you're like, this guy's problem is this. So when, for example, now let me relate to Swiggy's ICP, right? At that point in time, the challenge that Harsha and Andy kind of covered was that people want to order from good restaurants around themselves and they don't want to put any order value to it. They will pay the delivery fee. Because if you called something like a Meghna Biryani in Bangalore, Meghna Biryani would say, hey, order minimum for 300. Now I'm an individual sitting, I don't want to order for 300, right? And that's the insight. The insight is people want no minimum order. They're ready to pay 10, 20 bucks extra for delivery, right? And then the second insight is tracking of their food, because that was the anxiety, right? Once I've ordered, it's a black hole. Imagine 2012, 2014, right? You're calling a restaurant, like even Food Panda, you would place order on their platform and it's a black hole. And I remember that very, very clearly, that you wouldn't know when your food is coming, right? You're sitting with your guests and you don't know when is it going to arrive. No minimum order is one side. Now I'm not at a no minimum order. I ordered for the order value that you wanted, which is 300 bucks. But where is my order? 45 minutes, 1 hour, 90 minutes. It's not coming. And that's extreme anxiety that I used to live with, right, as a customer. And then all of a sudden, when this customer started getting SMS to say, and this wasn't even an app. So like, okay, the delivery boys arrived at Meghna's Biryani. He's picking it up now. He's picked it up now. He's on his way to you. Now he's arrived and the bell rings. You're like, wow. All of us, this is basic, right? This is how Ola, Uber also happened, by the way, right? That was much later. It was still a call and an SMS saying your cab is standing outside. This is your number. At that point in time, how you used to catch a cab line up with they're outside New York airport, there'd be 100 people lining up or whatever, 50, 60 people lining up or maybe more at times, right? Lining up for that cab. Somebody would come in and you would know, a dirty cab, kind of whatever, drivers won't take you to certain places. Look at Bombay taxis, right? I won't go there. Look at Bangalore autos, right? I'm not going there, or I will charge you 500 bucks or something like that, right? All of that became so simple, so easy. And that is how basically those are the insights that you're solving for. Those are the problems that you're solving for. And then everything that you're building around that a problem is the product. And then obviously then there is friction that you're trying to kill to make sure that you continue to solve that problem. But essentially you got stuck with one problem, right? That is how you started.
I can truly relate to that earn insight because I worked in a taxi industry for 2 years in Saskatchewan. Because there is no Uber or in that small town. It's primarily run by 2 cab companies, and this is the problem they face because I was the one as a head dispatcher. So this is the insight they also want to implement and they were facing on a day-to-day basis, because I think the earn insight comes from the problems you experience day-to-day as yourself as well.
Absolutely.
So this is how we can solve a problem, and it's better to have an earn insight rather than having a well-researched report where differ from place to place.
At least 0 to 1, your well-researched reports are important for figuring out what your market looks like, but not beyond that.
And you said many of the best founders you have met were very quiet, right? It's quite different from the other investor talks about. Why do you think the venture world is still over-indexing on loud storytelling?
I think that's important. I by no means, I don't mean that that's not important. I think in today's world, there is so much of opportunity to speak out. Second, I think the channels are available. It's important that you narrate your story to the world. But at the same point in time, it shouldn't be about just, shouting out loud. It should also be about building something meaningful in the back end. So in today's world, you can't be a brand which is just a product and has no, let's say, media visibility or no social media visibility for that matter, right? Part of building a brand, that's not a problem. But the challenge that I see is people are just talking and not doing stuff, which is where I really feel disappointed. So I think what's important is to build the business first and then also make noise around it. That's how I try and define it.
And I think there should be a part of a storytelling that need to be honest, true, and what you have experienced from your point of view, rather than just because many founders now they know that storytelling is important, so they try to build a fake story around it or try to create a hype of a story that I think that will sell to the consumer or to the investors. But if you are honest, true, or your own experience you're sharing, people can quietly relate authentically over. You have identified 3 habits behind every 100 million outcome you have seen: obsession, prioritization, and energy consistency. Which one do founders struggle with most and why?
I think every founder struggles with one of those things differently. That's all I can say. There are founders who are doing well with the obsession. They don't have consistency. People who have consistency change their problems too frequently. So basically, this is a continuous process. You always have to kind of stick to these things at different point in time. So make sure that you stay obsessed with the problem that you're solving. You're also prioritizing to make sure how you're supporting the mission that you're after. And then you have to keep doing this every single day. There is no end to it. There is no Saturday, Sunday. There is no weekend to this, right? There is always the same passion, same energy, same playbook. Just keep executing it.
If you are a founder, you have to do it every day. There is no like something like a balance to it. That's how you make extraordinary outcomes if you want to do it. And you made a very, very strong statement in AI. That is, AI should be an infrastructure, not just a product. What should like early stage founders do differently if they fully believe that AI should be an infrastructure?
So look at it as if you're starting a company, you have to think AI natively to say, like even your emails, for example, your mail management starting with AI, your campaign management has to be AI, your team management has to be AI, your HR has to be AI. All of that has to be AI. So that's exactly what I mean by infrastructure. So your entire backend thinking, your infrastructure thinking has to be AI first. In today's world, you can't be building a company anymore without AI in it across whatever you're doing. So everything has to be super efficient, has to be a lot more proficient, productive compared to what it has been ever before.
And now the people have started building startup as a solo team as well, or with a minimal team, right? People with 8 or 9 people, they have started building $1 billion companies where before it won't be possible without the AI, right? And there is a statement that now there will be a 1-person 10 billion company as well. So that is becoming a reality as well.
Absolutely.
For founders building in AI today, what is the one area that's really boring right now but massively valuable in future, like 10 or 20 years?
For founders building in AI, the space which is boring, I think everything. I mean, AI has its use cases which are very real right now, but there'll be a lot of use cases which will unlock. I'm not sure if there's any area in AI which is boring, by the way. I don't see any area in boring other than maybe if you were building a model, which is you're a techie and you're building a model, can take time. And so sometimes even collecting data for writing your language models can take time, right? So that might be looked at as a little boring thing to do. But otherwise, I think everything in AI, at least from our lens as an investor, looks very exciting.
Good to know about the AI future. And you are deeply involved in the community building through Startup Grand Toronto and Founders AMAs, right? Why is the help first mindset so central for how you operate?
I think, see, this is to do with our personal ethos as well. I think in the world that we operate, and especially being an investor, I think it's necessary. And this is one of the reasons why when I decided to be on the other side, which is to be an investor, the idea was to help a lot of these founders and help them shape up the economy, future, build new companies. And so capital is just one enabler, right? I think the bigger theme for us is actually helping people, like generally go out, tell what you've learned, how they can do better. So that's very central to me personally. But at the same point in time, I think you have to also understand that where do you need help? Like I can come in and help, but a lot of people come very unidirectionally with saying, hey, can you give us money? So we aren't just about giving you money, but we are actually here to help you if you're really seeking feedback, if you're really seeking to change yourself and build something meaningful for yourself and for the world.
Rather than just giving the money, you need to provide the value first, right? It's value-driven approach. So it's definitely money will come after it, right? And
absolutely,
many founders do have misconceptions about the VC as well. Like they really don't give money, but they also need to understand the VC also give returns to their LPs in a definite period of time, right?
correct.
So there is a big misconception about founders about have VC, which you are trying to break.
Yeah, I am like big time. I think what a lot of founders don't understand is how VC operate. So VCs do not run with their own personal money, and it's not like even if there is part of our personal money in the fund, it is not like we go out and splurge, right? It's spent very, very precariously. It's spent very, very meticulously. We're very sharp with our understanding of the areas that we need to spend in the way we identify our founders. So this is a game of top players, right? Like getting privately funded and raising capital. You have to up your game. You have to play the top game that you can think of. And if you're not a top player, it's going to be tough for you anyways. Like especially high growth, hyper growth companies like we were talking about earlier, right? These are very top A games in itself. Like you don't see companies doing $0 to $100 million in 14 months, 15 months. You don't see, $5 million to $300 million in 2 years. It doesn't happen without being at the top of your game. So if you're at the top of your game, VCs are going to line up for you. Forget you going to VCs as well. Of course, I mean, you should, but ideally build real value, create value for people, for your customers, for your investors, for your stakeholders, for everybody, create value. And then capital will come talking to you as it is.
Yeah, founders need to understand it's a cutthroat game, right? It's very hard. Yeah, it's emerging. You have to learn according to the market, and the speed and execution should be priority as per the changing market and demands, right? That's how like the hyper company go from like Zepto start in 2021 and like in 2026 they are going for an IPO, right? Very less amount of company that goes amount in like 5 to 6 years of time like Zepto.
2020 they started, but yeah, practically 2021. I mean,
So
you have to play the top game. You have to you cannot be a mediocre execution game and then think that you are going to get funded or you're going to make it big. It doesn't happen like that.
And for first time founders listening right now, what will be the one thing they should stop doing before approaching an investor?
I would say don't go unprepared to investors. Have your insights ready, have some kind of MVP ready, some PMF, some understanding. Like I'm telling you very basic, like these mistakes should be completely avoided at all point in times. But the ideal positioning is also where you've found your insight, you have some kind of traction, you're doing some revenue, whether you're a B2B, B2C, whatever you are. You also have built a team, you've thought of the future very clearly where you're headed with this. And then you're going to market to basically enable your business through capital, and not because capital is a milestone when you will do A, B, C, X, Y, Z. Now if I'll get capital, then I'll go to market. If I get this, then I'll go to 5 more customers. That's a wrong strategy. The right strategy is build the business. Just focus on building the business. And business means doing transaction profitably. That's all, right? Do that, whatever you're building, whatever you're doing, have a positive economics transaction that you're doing. And then if you want to scale fast and if your economics are right, then go and raise capital. But to say that now I want to expand faster, and then this capital is going to enable me to move faster in my journey.
Before going to VC, as we have previously discussed, you need to have an earned insight rather than having just the data. Because most of the pitch deck you will see the data from either like the paid data or their data in the internet, right? But you need to have an earned insight why your team is the right fit for that problem to solve, and how you will be able to solve at a scale that will make a profit for or provide value for your customer, your investor, your stakeholders, and for yourself as well.
Yep, absolutely. That's the right way to look at it.
If you were starting from zero today, no brand, no network, no capital, but just with everything you know as of now from your 17-year of journey as an operator, as an investor, what will you focus on the first 12 months to maximize your odds of winning or to build something meaningful?
You're saying if I started as an operator, if I started a company today?
Yes.
Yeah, I would just go and sit with my customers, whatever I am trying to do. Like whatever problem I'm feeling close to, whether it's solving something for the retailer, whether it's building something in the space of delivery, or even as extreme as something, let's say even space tech, right? Or robotics. I would first want to go and sit with the customers to learn more about what are the challenges and earn that consumer insight. And then go about building it up from there. And the first 12 months will actually be about going deeper into researching and running many experiments to say that, is this insight true? Is the solution sticking? What is the kind of solution that will make sense? And then further streamlining it with the business economics to make sure that this is scalable from economic standpoint as well. So yeah, I would spend a lot more time on the ground, meet the right people, and build many solutions, and then see which is the solution that stands out.
That's an amazing insight for the first time founders who is looking to build what they should focus for the first 12 months, meeting more consumer, try out more things as soon as possible, and figure out your way to get your product market fit as well as the business market fit as soon as possible, and then go to the right investor who can help you to scale faster and build companies at scale.
Absolutely.
Definitely, this was a very incredible conversation, very deeply honest, incredibly grounded, and packed with a real operator and investor wisdom. Ankur, thank you for sharing not just the wheels, but the thinking behind them. For everyone listening, if the episode resonates, make sure you follow BreakOut, share this with your founders or investor who need this, and stay curious. We will see you in the next episode.